Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
You can
Morning.
hear me, I
Good
Morning.
hope. All right,
morning.
good.
Good
Yeah,
morning.
awesome. Couple of you guys that made it to the state of the industry last week. What were a couple ahas? Stats related.
The biggest aha is that everything is in the positive direction. There's nothing
Yes,
to indicate that we are going to do any worse than we have in the past.
I love that. Thank you, Elka. Any other? Boom, 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 boom. All right, moving on. Okay. So let's jump into these numbers. We've got Broward County single family. So we had 2 big weeks of active inventory prior. A little softening, I guess, but not. I say softening. 839 active status changes is still pretty strong. We've got 14 coming soons. Looks like 153 went under contract and 145 are pending. So we've got about 300 properties in the single family category of Broward County under contract right now. They closed out 144 in the last 7 days. So we had some big closing weeks the 3 weeks prior, softened up just a little bit here. We'll see what the other categories and counties look like. And still seeing around 40, 44 expired. Looks like 31 withdrawn, 93 canceled. I still think this is going to be a big thing going forward. And I do believe it's a great business strategy for those that choose to partake. Broward County condos, we had 1140 hit the active status. Looks like that category stayed fairly strong. We had 117 go under contract and 124 in the pending category. Looks like that's about 330, 340 properties under contract right now. Now, if you look, we were 59 the end of December, went under contract, 75 went up to 100, 120, 117. The pending 80 climbing up to 124. We're really the condo market seems to be starting really strong. I also think with the majority of the country dealing with weather challenges, I think there's more people in town, more opportunities. I was talking to a valet guy over the weekend, and he was saying, I said, how do you feel like this season compares to previous seasons, like people in town? And he said, look, I said, this season, our normal season runs, but you got to understand the World Cup's coming here this summer. He said at the hotel industry and the service industry, they don't believe there's going to be an off season. They believe it's going to stay hot and maybe soften August, September. Take it or leave it. This was a valet guy. But I think there's some rationale behind we should have a really strong year and it should extend further into the year than normal because of the World Cup coming here. And you realize if you were at the stats event on Friday, we were posting where the international clients moving here are coming from, where the national clients were relocating here from. I think it's just going to keep the year really strong for an extended period of time, and we're all going to benefit from that. So, just thinking about that in terms of the year's starting off fast, your season's going to last a little longer than normal. And I think, as Elka made mention, every economist thinks on a national scale, it's going to be everything's going up and going to be a better year. All that to say, all the cards are in the deck right now, like for us to have a pretty good year. All right, moving on. Let's go Miami-Dade single family, 801. So a little off week there in single family. not bad. I mean, it was still good. It just wasn't what we saw the two previous weeks. 120 under contract, 156 pending, and then 149 closing. So it does seem like in the single family category, it was a little softer week than we saw the two previous, but not like anything to write home about. Miami-Dade condos, 1,052 active status change. Only nobody does coming soons in condos apparently. Um, and then the 91 went under contract, which is the highest it's been year to date. So it's certainly building fast in the condo world. 132 pending, and there were 126 that closed out in the last 7 days. If I jump down to Palm Beach, single family, Palm Beach has 948, which was their highest active status change. They have 245 that went under contract in the last 7 days, which was the highest. And then there's 129 pending, and then they had 178 closed out. So it looks like the single family market in Palm Beach is really starting to pop. The condo market in Palm Beach, 180 or 879 active status, 114 went under contract, which is triple digits, which is great. 95 are pending right now, which is down just a little bit from last week, probably because we closed some of them out at 116. So those are the numbers I like to just look at on a weekly basis. What do you see? What do you feel? Talk to me.
It's amazing how it changed since December in all category. It's just remind us how, I mean, it almost doubled in every single county.
Yeah. You know, we look at trend graphs and I mean, I tell everybody there's a bell curve to real estate, right? And it always dies out at the end of the year and then starts climbing at the beginning of the year. But I think we forget that, right? We just out doing our business. Any
Brett,
other thoughts?
yeah, Brett,
Yeah,
all I see here is social media opportunity to discuss this because especially like even Palm Beach County, as it's going up for actives, that's a great social media post for buyers right there. And on the selling side, it's good because they're going up too. So either way, this is just an opportunity to get your message out there.
got it. All right, Frankie, my social media editor.
Hi. So I want to say I use Ylopo and I have seen into a point where I can't even keep up. My past people my past leads are now raising their hands. They're going in and looking at properties. So like seeing a lot of movement and technically I'm supposed to give them a call like right away. And it's so much that I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to be able to handle this? So I'm seeing a lot of buyer activity in the back end and people who have been dormant for like 198 days are now coming back and moving and looking at properties. So it looks like people are coming back to the buyer's market, and that's from my experience.
Perfect. All right. Well, that kind of leads to this article. It says, buckle up, agents, because mortgage rates are near their lowest level in 3 years. And one of the things that I was talking to a group of investors about the other day is if you think about 2025, it took a chunk of the year for the rates to get down to where people had some excitement about it that actually affected buyer demand. We're starting 2026 with those same rates that are, I think most people are warmed up to, excited about, and it's just going to give us a runway for 2026 that I don't think we had 12 months ago. And to Frankie's point and everybody's point, Elsa's point, like the activity is really starting to show up, and that's why we track it on a week to week basis, right? Because we want to see the temperature, the pulse of the market. And I don't know, I haven't pulled this morning's rates yet. Let's do that real quick. So this morning it closed out Friday at 4 p.m. At 6.19. So we're still holding under 6.25. And I think there's going to be a pressure to even bring it down a little bit lower. I think some people are starting to get locked without having to pay points in the high fives. Depends on the lender and your lender partner and products they have and credit and all that stuff. But this is an average rate. So you know that half the people are getting below that, right? But starting the year off, it's a big start off pretty strong. All right. South Florida, 10 million plus luxury home sales hit 4-year high. So ultra luxury is flying right now. And if you've had people in your pipeline that were just sitting on listings or they didn't maybe they had their house on the market previously. This is the article to go ping your ultra net worth database and take it to them and say, look, the 10 million plus doesn't always have the temperature in the marketplace that it has today. Should we have a conversation about putting your house on the market? Anybody in the ultra luxury world seeing this, have any feedback? All right. They're in your database, whether you know it or not. Okay.
A lot of
Buyers
high
are,
fan buyers are still waiting. They feel that there is too much uncertainty, politically speaking, and worldwide speaking.
okay. On the ultra luxury or what? Or all
Not
across?
ultra luxury, but close to, I would say.
Okay. The buyers are returning. Sellers are increasingly realistic about pricing. Do you believe this statement? That was my first question for this article.
I'm beginning to see it.
Okay. Anybody else? I don't know who iPhone 2 is, but you're reverberating. The
I do.
sellers being realistic. So it takes time for sellers to get in realism with the market. Do we feel like our sellers are getting there?
I think that they're getting there, but I'm seeing still the 67% price reductions. So I think that they're still needing to be guided because a lot of and there's 50% failed listings. So, and again, it all depends on the location and the area, but I still think that pricing is a strategy and it's a conversation. And as much as the buyers are returning and sellers are increasingly getting more realistic, it really is who's in front of them giving and having that conversation. They need to see what's selling and how long it's taking to sell. And do they want to include a price reduction?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Topo?
Good morning, Brett. Thanks for the call.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate to have clients. My last 4 listings have all sold in less than a week, all above asking price, because sellers were willing to listen to my counsel. And Vicky's absolutely right. It starts with trust, and they've got to trust that you have an idea and a pulse of the market. And that's why I like to teach the supply and demand analysis, about once a quarter or so that we can portray this message. It's not me telling you you need to price your home at X. The market is clearly showing us in these different pricing brackets where the consumption rate is happening and how many months of inventory. In the last year and a half, 2 years, I've turned down 15 to 20 listings for as little as $25,000 or $50,000. And then you've got sellers that had wanted $100,000 more than what I would recommend. And I'm just choosing to move differently.
Yeah.
I know agents that are open to taking overpriced listings and then fight with the seller. I just don't have the emotional energy for that.
Yeah, I want to go to Richard for a minute. Richard, this is that whole summary chart in Chartmasters, is it not?
Absolutely. The entire stats presentation that I did on Friday all shows the importance of pricing. Everything in that presentation, from the number of active pending solds, days on market, everything leads up to that conversation of pricing. And Mike, I believe you're teaching a class on pricing strategy this coming week, aren't you?
I haven't solidified the date. I haven't decided if
You
I
are
want to do it
now.
well, my thought is, Richard, my thought is, do I want to teach it on a team meeting day or do I want to teach it like on a Tuesday or Thursday?
Well, I think pricing should be taught all times, right? Because no matter the temperature of the market, we've always got to be, and this is what I love about this call is you need data to have a great pricing conversation and you need articles so you're not the bad guy, right? Like you got to present the facts in a unemotional way. And you know, Richard was specifically talking about chart masters, and chart masters is a tool, but there's an emotion behind it too
Yes.
that the seller brings to the table. And I think what this article is trying to say is that emotion is probably they're willing to listen to you more. Like if you've ever raised a teenager, you know what that emotion of I'm not listening to what you're saying is like. It's the same thing with sellers, right? Like they're either listening to you or they're just hearing you, right? And I think they're starting to listen to real estate agents more. Jennifer, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, I've been using that Chartmaster chart and also that with our supply and demand and our CMA, it tells a story to the seller and helps them understand, but it also helps them understand that it doesn't necessarily have to sell in a week. We have to look back at what our supply and demand tells us. If it's telling us that there's 3 months of inventory in that community, then we need to be realistic that it may take a little bit of time, but actually pay attention to the amount of showings, how much traffic, how many calls we're getting too. So there's many different tools, like you said, that we have to use. It can't be just, you know, what that chart tells us or, what the CMA tells us. We have to think of that supply and demand too and remind them of that because this isn't 2022, 2023. They're not selling. I'm sorry, Mike. I think that's great that you're having, you know, great experience with that, but that's not always the case. You have to go back to supply and demand and see how long it is saying it could take.
Yep. I agree with that. Dan?
Yeah, so to your point, Jennifer, that's why at the listing appointment, I quote the range low to high versus giving the customer a price. And you're right, and Mike, you're right too. Sellers are starting to listen. I quote the range, and then it kind of comes down to their timeline, right? So if you see that there's a 3 month supply, and you need to be out in the next 30 days, we should be on the lower side of the range. And that's just the strategy that I use in terms of arriving at where to list once you quote that range. If they're not in a rush, then you could be on the higher end of the range and just set the expectation that it can take the 3 to 4 months. So yeah, all good, all valid points.
Yep, I totally agree with you, Dan. If they haven't found their next house yet, then we have a little bit of time to work with. Then, we utilize that time and not do an immediate price reduction. And I know some agents on this call would disagree with my tactic of doing that, but I just feel that that's the right thing to do for the seller when they're also a buyer and haven't identified where they're going to be going next.
Yeah, and there's something too, the fact that the market is starting to move again and if more buyer demand continues to pile up and inventory and listings don't come back, then we're going to start to see price appreciation. The market can come to us over time. So I think that that's part of the story also.
Mm-hmm.
Nadine, you had your hand up.
Just kind of leaning towards what Dan was saying, but we use the facts, we use the numbers to get the price right. And I think days on market is where we reach out to their emotional side to actually make them act. And so I think harping on days on market is the flip side. Even though it's numbers and it's logic, it's definitely the emotional argument we want to bring them to get them the price right, which is pretty much what Dan's saying.
All right, got it. I'm gonna move us on.
What I will say, Brett, one second. What I think is
Yeah.
awesome is how many people are starting to use stats in their listing presentations. I think that's awesome, and it's a Richard's been screaming it since the day I walked into the office. I started a year ago, and it sounds like many more agents are starting to kind of get hip to the game. So kudos to all the agents that are using stats.
Absolutely. All right, next article. I mean, here's the thing of leadership. Where we know you sometimes hear us, but are you listening? Same thing, right? Like this is best practice. All right, don't count on the silver tsunami for housing inventory surge. Here's what this is saying is there are a large number of people that own houses that are in that baby boomer category that are aging and they're owning houses and those houses are getting inherited more than they're coming on the market. And I still think baby boomer, when I look at the statistics, baby boomers is by and large the largest demographic that is leading to sales right now, which is crazy to me. Normally, it's that 35 to 44 age range, but um, it's still a large percentage of our market. But this article is saying that a lot of those people are just transferring the wealth, and we've read how wealth transfer is there's a giant wave of wealth transfer coming to the market, which I think by and large will make its way to the market over time because uh, people inherit houses and don't want to take care of them and decide to sell them and da 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 da. Da. But I think if we think that there's what they're calling a silver tsunami of housing inventory is going to come save the inventory shortage, it's probably not going to happen from that. Make sense? Not everybody at once.
Nope.
All right. Uh, South Florida housing market sees sales spike as sellers forced to cut asking prices. I thought about this article, and it could be used in a price reduction conversation, but I think it's a truth or evidence that's saying sellers are starting to get more realistic. They're starting to listen. And I can't get it out of my head. I keep thinking about that conversation in the movie White Men Can't Jump between Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson, and they're talking in the car about the music, and it's are you listening or are you hearing? And it's really that whole thing is sellers are getting buyers are warming up to interest rates being good rates at the low sixes, and sellers are warming up to conversations around realism in pricing. And if both those factors move us closer to center, you're going to sell more houses. And it's certainly happening, right? All right, what other article did I have? Okay, so the Florida House property tax proposals move forward. So the House Ways and Means Committee approved a proposal constitutional amendment that would phase out non-school homestead property tax over the next decade. What does this mean? Richard, you got a take on this?
Uh, yeah, I do.
Or anybody? Yeah.
Not and not to be political about it in any way, but to me, either removing property taxes in order to make housing more affordable, or what's happening at the national level in trying to force interest rates down to a lower level, I think that's going to have a horrible boomerang effect because what you're doing is creating more of an artificial reason for people to jump into the market. And when that happens, I think you're going to see prices take a spike up again, and it just defeats the entire purpose of making housing more affordable.
Yeah, so let's rewind history for a minute. Is when we had the Great Recession in '08, '09, '10, the government gets involved to try to boost the economy, to try to boost home sales. Back then, there was a bunch of first-time home buyer tax credits and incentives to buy houses, and then they did uh, all kinds of just incentives, right?
Mm-hmm.
You realize that they do that to speed up the economy and they do these things to speed up or help with affordability. But there's always a day of reckoning because what happens is you're pulling sales from the future into the present, and then there's still a future date that will show up that those sales probably
Mm-hmm.
naturally would have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Yeah,
But
now,
it's
now
just how
the
they
example of
operate,
that,
right?
Brett, is what's
Yeah.
happened for the last couple of years. During COVID, when the markets went crazy, both with the number of sales and price appreciation, that only took sales from what we should have had for the last 2 to 3 years. And we're now just coming back out of that back into a normal market.
Yeah. Jackie Ellis, you got a perspective? You've been around just as long as us, if not longer.
Yeah, so I don't mind being a little political. Richard's nicer than I actually
Uh-oh.
love this proposal. You
Yeah.
know, we're just so unbalanced with our homeowners insurance and our car insurance. I just think that we do need a little break. And why should the government keep collecting money that they really probably don't always need? So I think it's worth looking at. You know, I don't go as deep into things. Richard's a lot smarter than I am, but on the surface, I think it's good.
Okay, I got to step in.
Ask you a question.
All right, Miss Carter.
As
What
a
do you
former
think
elected
will
official,
happen?
Here we go.
listen, think of it this way. With a homestead exemption, you have a cap on your taxes. If you remove property taxes, you are going to a fee-based system. There is no cap. They have 3 to 4% increases every year, normally, and depending on what the market brings. And before I was in government, I had no freaking clue what it took to run a city. I mean, a $220 million budget, and 56% of it goes just to police. It will be awful for all governments, the 31 cities in Broward, if you remove property taxes. But if you tell homeowners, hey, I'm taking away your property taxes, what do you think they're going to say? Yes, but be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, there's always a day of reckoning, right?
And always. And to your point, Jackie, the best thing that they could do instead of looking at property taxes, put your efforts into reducing our insurance, which is a bigger burden
100%.
on most people than taxes are.
Well, I
That's
think
the number one issue to affordability here when you ask most of the consumers. It's the insurance issue.
If you think about this, because we're in such a litigious area in Broward and Palm Beach and Miami-Dade, our insurance, for example, when I bought my house, it was like $3,600. It's $8,000 now, right? Jeff's house up in St. Johns County, $1,200 a year. Spread it around the state so we're not dying down here on this end. You know, they've passed all the legislation to stop the lawsuits. Now save us.
Yeah, I have clients that have a $40,000 a year insurance bill on their waterfront home. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
So I want to take us out of this for a second and just kind of be logical for a second. The country is struggling with affordability. And if you think about affordability, you've got principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And then you have the cost to buy. So principal is pricing or prices. Interest is mortgage rates. Taxes are, you'll see things like this come at the market. And insurance is the other thing that affects affordability on the monthly payments. But then you also have the cost to buy. So you also are seeing them try to get the cost of the closing fees down. You're seeing conversations around insurance and how to get the cost of insurance down. You're seeing proposals like this to get the cost of taxes down. You're seeing the pressure on interest rates to come down. And then we're also seeing prices stay flat for a minute. And there's opinions on all of it, right? But what I would tell you as a real estate professional is all five of those categories The rhetoric at the national or at the media level is how to make real estate sales move faster. And as a real estate professional, we will benefit from that in the short run. The cost of that long term is totally up for debate, right? But every one of those categories is moving in the favor of the real estate market moving faster. Prices holding or slightly coming down, interest rates coming down, taxes maybe getting some relief depending on that. Insurance, there's pressure on getting insurance down, and the government's doing a lot of things to try to reduce closing costs, which I think is nickels and pennies compared to the equation. But everything is pressuring the to push on to make housing more affordable right now. And as a real estate professional, that will speed up our market, and you should benefit from that. And ultimately, we should sell more houses as a result of that. Whether it's good or bad is totally up for debate, right? But just from a global perspective, it's pressure to make the market go faster. Does that summarize that a little bit?
Yeah. When you understand that real estate, both directly and indirectly, accounts for somewhere between 20 and 25% of our entire economy, that's the reason the government is always looking at real estate. And as you just said, Brett, they want to speed up the real estate industry because that just drives money to the rest of the economy. Whether there's going to be a day of reckoning as a result of that, only time will tell.
Yeah, and everybody's entitled to their opinion politically and good and bad, but my job on here is to give you more of a global view of what it all means, right?
Yep.
And what I do know is this article is saying we're seeing a 14% sales surge in Southeast Florida home sales right now. And this was published on January 16th, so that's not even the last 2 weeks of data, right? So we're benefiting right now. They're calling it from low mortgage rates. I think it's more complex than just more mortgage rates, but we're selling more houses, guys, and that's a good news. All right. Any final thoughts, comments?
Thank
Did you
you.
learn something?
Thank you for Friday, by the way. The whole package was amazing. I appreciate it. I appreciate your efforts, the stats. It took me a little bit of time to get adjusted to the new slides versus what we're used to, right, Richard? But everything came together and it's enlightening. And I just, I crave that knowledge because knowledge is power, right?
Yeah, I don't give Luke Benton enough credit. He's on this call. He's the wizard behind the scenes that puts all that stuff together. So he certainly deserves a lot of credit for that. All right, you guys, have a good Monday. Go make some money.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.